November 5th, 2015. I decided to go for the second attempt at taking my own life. A handful of cabinet candies, cuts at the wrist, and the cold ceramic of the bathtub at my back were all that I needed for this sweet end into the eternal unknown. Spoiler alert, it didn't quite go as intended, huh? Mental health has been something that I struggled with most of my life. From my early upbringing of two parents unable to cope with having an autistic child, beatings and verbal beratings where confusion would brew, I was constantly told that I'd never be normal and how I was a burden. A retard. All of this followed me well into my early 20s, where I realized we all experience trauma in our lives in one way or another. It shapes us, but it's up to us to make sure it doesn't define us. Oh my god, Psychonauts. Psychonauts is a 3D platformer created by the folks at Double Fine Studios, the company that brought us such classic gems like Connect Party. Okay, other than Brutal Legends, the studio didn't really have many hits. I mean, there was Broken Age, I guess. Anyway, back to Psychonauts. Psychonauts is funny. I mean, really funny.
Hey, do you have a lighter? 'Cause if you lit it and held it up right now, that would be rad.
And completely insensitive to me and my issues.
Say something hideous and horrible jumps out at you. Something so disgusting that it simply must die.
You play as Rasputin Aquato, a young circus performer that ran away from his family to pursue his dreams of becoming a psychic secret agent, a psychonaut. His family of psychicating carnies were cursed to all die in water by a psychic themselves, leaving Raz, who was born with the mind of one, to flee his home in search of refuge, surrounding himself with others just like him. In one day, Raz needs to collect all of his psychic merit badges, learn all the basics of brain training, and stop a mysterious plot from a crazed dentist to steal the brains of all the camp's inhabitants.
Lily, a deranged madman is building an army of psychic death tanks to take over the world, and there's no one who can stop him, except for you and me.
Oh my god! Let's make out!
Sab, you can't just open a video on depressing shit and go into talking about a child summoning old men through his ear with the power of bacon. What gives? Well, what game to better show you the raw inner workings of the human brain than a game about entering the human brain? Throughout your quest to collect your merit badges, you bob and weave in and out of the minds of the campgoers, all of which with a story to tell, all of which who have experienced trauma in some way, learning how their mind interprets and copes with these traumas. The first one, Coach Oleander, being obvious.
The mental world.
It looks like a dentist office.
A mental dentist office.
He is a war veteran, so his brain recounts his time in the trenches, including all of the gunfire, mortars, halo jumps, and in the end, how he still comes to terms with himself because from his perspective, what he was doing was the right thing. Sasha 9's mind is meticulously organized and in perfect order, but when chaos eventually rains down, you see what's under the hood, the setting of his first loss, his mother as an infant. His partner, Mio Vidello's mind resembles a 1960s dance party where the funk never stops. She surrounds herself with all of her closest friends and blocks out all of the bad energy because she lives with the guilt of letting the children of her pediatric ward burn alive.
Now you definitely don't want to go in there. That's a party killer right there. What are you doing down here? The party is upstairs. Maybe for you I have my nightmares under control. These things can take you to a world of pain and interruptions. Now quick, let's get back to the party, okay?
Darling, if you're looking for the makeup room, you've come to the wrong place.
Bipolar, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, lungfish? Psychonauts understands trauma and how it shapes one's mind, and how those minds perceive those around it. In the end, Rasputin better understands those at Whispering Rock and the mental institution, comes to terms with his father, finding comfort in knowing that family is what's really important, and that dentists are evil. Very evil. One spin-off VR title in 15 fucking years later, Psychonauts 2 was finally delivered, and it did not disappoint. And rose-tinted shades for the original put aside, it may be one of the most important pieces of gaming that I have personally ever played. It'd be completely ignorant to say that Double Fine has the entire human mind down pat. Humans are complex, even ones that look like this, but they did their research and they know their stuff. Trauma, the outer repercussions, how it affects those around them, and a big theme of Psychonauts 2, how people cope with their struggle. Recovery is an upward battle, and I should know. And sometimes what you think is the right thing to cope with the loss or emotional damage may not be the best. Years after an event happens, maybe decades, and Psychonauts 2 reminds you, the player, that things can get better. And sometimes, a little divine intervention is all you need.
Molecule through my cosmic eye.
Ford, what is it?
See for yourself.
Before we tackle some of the minds of Psychonauts 2, let's take a look at our main protagonist, Rasputin Aquato. Raz is an egg.
And you bring back Agent Cruller and find out what he knows.
Yes, if I can find some bacon.
He means well, going out of his way to help the inhabitants of Whispering Rock and the asylum on the lake, but at the end of the day, he's still just a child, and his views of what's acceptable, right and wrong, get challenged very early on. Now a member of the Psychonauts intern program, Rasputin is tired of the bureaucracy and lame shit like school and the Postal Service. Luckily, it doesn't take too long for drama and action to start snowballing. Truman Zanato, leader of the Psychonauts saved in said motion sickness simulator, is sick with silurium poisoning. His kidnapper's accomplice is still at large, and there may be an imposter
Among us.
And Nick's brain was taken. Not Nick! With an opportunity for the interns to get some hands-on field experience, Hollis Forsythe, the second head of the Psychonauts, steps in, claiming it to be far too dangerous. The casino is no place for a bunch of rugrats that can set people on fire. Hollis instead teaches the children of mental connection, a mobility skill for Rasputin, and lets him jump from one thought to another. But Raz, doing stuff in his, Razzy ways, he manages to drag one of those train of thoughts to another and eventually learns he can use this to change the minds of people that he is inhabiting. Poking around in places he shouldn't, Raz comes to find out that the Psychonauts are currently struggling with funding. Hollis does consider giving the children field experience, but associates the risk with death. All Rasputin has to do is associate the thought of risk to something other than death, and
I think I just figured out how to solve all our money problems.
Well, the kids are on a mission and everything is wrong. Hollis has thrown all caution to the wind and is rejecting all outside help. It's pretty obvious. Gambling addiction. The once sterile walls of the hospitals in her mind, now a neon-lit casino, as risk now equates to money. And for Raz to even be considered, he needs to become a gazillionaire and enter the High Rollers Lounge. In one corner of Hollis's brain, you play a game of Pillinko, and your goal is to get her to swallow the pill and get to her stomach. One problem, her heart is in her stomach. All the thoughts in her mind continue to negatively reinforce her unhealthy thoughts and sunk fallacy costs, and no one can lose forever. The message is there, just misconstrued and tangled amongst the FOMO.
You know what? I think the only way to win is to know when to play and when to stop.
Oh, you're going down all right, once the boss finds out about this. But you ain't taking me with you. I'm out of here.
Despite showing Forsythe the folly of her thoughts, she decides to double down, shutting herself even further in her own mind of self-indulgence. Making your way to cardio, you find your friend to the heart again, but this time in a race. Gazillion to 1, I like those odds.
It's Diamond Days for the win!
That's weird. Most people usually win every time. Well, try again. Bye!
Despite being injured, the heart is forced to race on, or it's over for their career. Raz convinces the heart to let him run in her stead, life being more of a relay race than a mad dash that you need to complete on your own.
Sorry, we're broke after that race, which reminds me. Don't forget to tip your nurses, you cheapskates!
The maternity ward has two skeletons pining over the chance of winning a baby. They're rich, by the way.
We are already so rich.
So rich.
Because we're so rich.
You're rich?
Yes, but we don't like to talk about it.
Hollis connects money and delight in how it can be used to solve all of her problems, but even in her state, she understands the system is rigged and that the only winning move is to play. But how will you ever challenge the system if you never try?
When does it start fulfilling all of our unachieved ambitions?
Right after we use its identity to hide our excess taxable income.
Oh, it will be so nice to have a couple of spare kidneys around the house.
Untangling her mind and taking out her inner demons brings her back down from a high and is rightfully pissed off. Seeing how remorseful Rasputin is brings her back to her own time at the neurology ward that she worked at. Hollis pulled a similar stunt on her old mentor, Dr. Potts, after taking credit for her own medical work. But Raz succeeded where Hollis failed. To root that person back in reality. You play with the mind so willy-nilly in the original game, so to have your actions questions really brings into perspective that you can't force people to change their minds. The Psychonauts have this amazing power and responsibility to help and cure, but derailing someone's train of thought to control someone, to force them to think how you want them to think, well, that's just a massive Richard relocation, ain't it? Themes of self-isolation, worth, anxiety, reliance all come to play within the minds of Psychonauts 2, and within the minds of the Psychic 6. Ford Cruller, Otto Mentalis, Cassiopeia, Bob Zanato, Compton Boole, and Helmut Fulbear, all victims of the same trauma and coping through very different means. There was a seventh among the group before the six became the Psychonauts, Lucretia Mux, a powerful hydrokinesis specialist, a friend to her fellow psychics, and lover of Ford Cruller. But as war raged in her homeland of Grulovia, she fled to protect her people. Saving the Tsar Prince Kristolv Malik, she became one of the most powerful assets as war minister. When the war was won, Grulovian common folk protested in a lavish spending of the elite, Kristol eventually commanding the genocide of his own people to keep those in line. The Psychic Six were brought in with one task: take down Lucretia, their old friend. But there was no longer a Lucretia. All that remained was Maligula. The duel would destroy the mind of Ford Cruller, explaining the erratic behavior at Whispering Rock. Helmut Fulbear's life would be taken, his brain surviving only to be shelved, leaving Bob Zanato a widow. Cassiopeia would flee, feeling a loss in purpose, leaving her best friend Compton Boole, who used her as an anchor for his crippling anxiety. Otto sells colorful balls. Yeah, Otto pretty much got away unscathed.
Someday, my brain will live here, and yours too.
What?
Should have read that NDA more carefully.
Compton Boole, yes, that Boole.
I would never do that. I could never kill everyone.
Compton suffers from an extreme case of anxiety disorder. Like his son, he struggles with, not blowing things up with his mind, and spends most of his time in psycho-isolation, just like the ones seen in the GPC of the first game. His mindscape is in the shape of a cooking show being judged by his fellow Psychonauts. Due to past events, he views his compatriots as demanding.
In an attempt to please our celebrity judges.
Impossible!
He'll never do it. He's nothing without Cassie.
Raz needs to continuously stick up for Compton, showing his over-reliance of his now missing friend is unhealthy. His way with coping from past tragedies was to completely isolate himself from the world around him, shunning any social actions and remorse out of fear and safety of his colleagues. Instilling Compton with enough confidence, he is tasked to cook the last dish alone while you play the role as sous chef, gathering byproducts from past dishes.
Oh.
I need to go find Cassie right away.
Wait, don't you want help? Guess he doesn't.
Cassiopeia was a beekeeper who worked alongside Compton, and her time away has made her a prisoner of her own passion. Cassie's mindscape is run by a librarian, the aspect of her that demands total control, tasking Rasputin to find dangerous books that don't belong, containing 3 aspects of Cassie herself. Literally Ray Orwell Bradbury's Fahrenheit 1984. Cassie is at war with herself, wanting to be of use, but her last mission and unwillingness of her comrades to lend her strengths put her mind in a sort of jumbled state.
I'm just playing along with her until I find the real Cassie.
The real Cassie? Tell me, child, what is your name?
Rasputin.
And tell me, who is the real Rasputin? The one you are with your friends? With your family? Or the one you save for your special someone? Or are you actually a combination of all those different identities? Important challenges in our lives can cause us to create entirely new identities for ourselves, sometimes summoning powerful archetypes from our unconscious mind.
The aspects that inhabit her mind represent her life, a counterfeiter from the days in Shanghai that she left behind, the writer she started as on her way to the top, and then the teacher that she became, and the overbearing librarian whose duty is to stop her from ever being whole. Not everyone is black and white as ink on paper. People are complex and not just one note, but separating yourself from those parts that make you you only causes confusion, not just to those around you, but yourself.
Hi. Are you the real Cassie?
Not sure. But I'm sure she's in here somewhere.
Bob Zanato was devastated at the loss of his husband, Helmut Fulber. He became a danger to his fellow psychics, and his own nephew, Truman, was forced to fire him, sending him into a deep depression.
Oh, are you headed down to the boss's office?
Fired?
I do not
You
envy
can't fire me! Recruited by Ford Crawler himself! No pipsqueak nephew's gonna fire me!
Bob's early life was mostly him fending for himself and blissfully ignorant to his mother and her crippling alcohol addiction. The one thing he enjoyed, gardening, becoming his new prison, much like Cassie's beekeeping, as he lapsed into the same unhealthy habits of his late mother. Bob's mindscape is depicted as a vast ocean, small islands dotted about, the isolation keeping himself from his past memories of his friends and how he perceives them.
Hi, Agent Zanato.
You're fired. You think I won't fire family? Firing people makes me feel like a big man.
Hey, Lily. I thought you hadn't seen your great-uncle Bob in years. How does he know what you look like?
My dad sent him pictures for years.
He's never heard your voice, though, has he?
How'd you know?
The moth that inhabits Bob's mind represents the escapism he feels from indulging in his addictions, doing anything to keep the seeds of his memories from being rooted under the guise of keeping him safe. This theory being solidified by its use of confusion psychic powers that impede your movement and vision. After the visions of his late husband Helmut tell Bob that he never loved him, Bob realizes that Helmut would never say that and sobers up, and returns to planting the seeds of his past to better connect with his roots and shun the source of his problem.
Robert Zanato, take this man, Helmut Fulber. The happiest day of my life. I used to think I loved plants more than people, until I met this man. When these feelings appeared in my heart, I thought they were weeds, and I tried to pull them out. But this mighty oak has given me shade, shelter, something to lean on when I needed it. Just when I thought I was turning to seed, you made me bloom again.
Helmut Fulber's brain was shelved after the battle against Maligula, and after 2 decades and the lack of any stimuli has caused his mind to completely atrophy.
Sorry, I just haven't talked in such a long time. Oh my gosh, is that my voice? Is that what I sound like? What do you sound like? Oh my gosh, who are you? Are you not me?
Using Nick's body, Raz is able to give Helmut a chance to see, smell, taste, and touch again, and, oh well.
Oh god, I can smell the Big Bang! There's an ant in the wall that's grinding its teeth. Everythingness, oneness, nothingness, nothingness, nothingness! Is this cashmere? It's too delicious!
The overstimulation after years of nothing and left Helmut in a constant state of stress, his mindscape representing a psychedelic 70s rock stage. Still unaware of who he even entirely is, Raz is tasked to find his friends, the Psychic Six, in the form of personified senses. But all this is too much, as the simulation of every new sense Helmut recovers sends him into a panic attack. But through the power of just slowing the fuck down, Helmut is able to overcome. The mental aspect of Maligula manifests in his own mind and comes to pull the psychic back down, claiming his friends never really cared. They never salvaged his body, they left him shelved.
Dear universe, please, shut up!
Helmut doubts himself and for 20 years saw himself as completely useless, but his friends comfort him, assuring that his sacrifice was the only reason that the battle was won, giving the Psy King the confidence to face that aspect of Maligula haunting his mind. And lastly, our friend from the previous game, Ford Cruller. For years, the stories that tell of the deluge of Grilovia stated that his mind was shattered in the fight, when in reality it was self-inflicted. Ford loved Lucretia, and when she left, he felt like his entire world was ending. He continued to mail her letters to keep in touch, but eventually the responses stopped. Her persona, Maligula, began to take over. All he could do was watch as the waves of genocide swept over the people of her own homeland.
Her name is Lucretia, but I called her Lucy. And even from that first date in that grimy bowling alley, I knew that it was too good to last forever. Hey, all relationships end one way or another. Well, I just didn't think it would end so badly. Hey, cheer up. Even Gutterballs returned. She just wanted to help, but they pushed her too far. How should we have known? It's not like she was marked fragile. But I thought I knew her and everything she held inside herself. I had so much to learn. I guess some packages are better left unopened. War changes everybody. Inside all of us, we all have dark roots. Well, sometimes we need that darkness to survive. Careful. Sometimes it's hard to get it back in the bottle.
Ford couldn't cope with what he had to do during his fight against Maligula, and using the power of Auto Mentalis' astrolabe, he fractured his own mind, forgetting about Helmut's shelved brain, forgetting about the people he loved, and decommissioning the Psychic Six for good. It's strange how one singular traumatic event can cause such different traumatic responses in those that endured it. Get your Mr. Enter jokes out of the way, but the best analogy I can think of were the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. Whether you were there or not, whether you were directly or indirectly affected, whether you were even born yet, the trauma the world sustained that day is still felt. And everyone continues to cope differently. Everyone knows their own pain, and everyone has their own way to deal with that pain. Sometimes those people walk away mostly unscathed, and sometimes people become self-destructive and confused, but it's something that you don't have to confront alone. It's something that someone else has gone through and is going through, and sometimes all you need is a little helping hand.